The Utah Utes and Baylor Bears face off in week 2 of the college football season. We're breaking down the matchup and predicting the winner on today's Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into a special crossover episode of Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylors. I'm JT Wistcill of Locked On Utes, excited to be joined by the new host of Locked On Baylor, Cameron Stuart. If this is your first time listening to either of our shows, make sure you guys like and subscribe. We'd love interacting with you guys in the comments as well as on social media. You guys can follow us at our social media handles at JT Wistcill as well as at the real Cam Stewart. And also today's episode is brought to you by our great and wonderful friends at Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So when breaking down this game between Utah and Baylor, Cameron, I think the biggest thing you have to start with is, look, Utah looked very impressive in week 1 against Florida. Baylor, of course, did not, with a tough loss to Texas State. I think
you weren't impressed with Baylor's performance.
I was not, unfortunately, and we can dive into the specifics as why that is. But I'm curious from you, can Baylor beat Utah with how they looked in week 1 and without their starting quarterback?
The way you presented the question, no, they can't. I'm sorry, man. I'm trying to keep it dramatic here, but no, they can't. They can win the game because you roll the footballs out there and you play 60 minutes. But with the quarterback hurt and the way they played in week 1, I don't care if you had Brady at quarterback. I still wouldn't have picked the Baylor to cover in this game, let alone win. So, no, I don't feel great about it this week, JT. I really don't.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I could talk about some of the specific things with Baylor overall, but I will say, like, it's not, like we said, it's not impossible because I think, like what you mentioned, just rolling the football out there, right? Like Sawyer Robertson. Yeah, Sawyer Robertson, look, he was 6 for 12, 113 yards. He did have the interception. It was one the receiver should have caught, in my opinion, maybe thrown a little.
Yeah, it was behind him.
Behind him though too. So one of those. And then he showed the ability to run a little bit. He had that one long scramble, but unfortunately fumbles at the end of it. He's never really started a game. So that's where it gets tough, where this is not Texas State's defense. This is Utah's defense. And this, in my opinion, has the chance to be one of the best defenses in college football this season when, they lost Clark Phillips from last year, but pretty much everyone else is back. You have so many key returning pieces, and even the transfers they brought in already looked really good in week 1. And that Gators offense just looked abysmal for most of the game. I mean, they scored 11. They got to 11. They had 3 for most of that game. And yes, they got it into the red zone and stalled, but that was also something that happened to Baylor. We know they got into the red zone and stalled a few times against Texas State. But I am curious, what are your thoughts on Sawyer Robertson, and can he spearhead this offense to some success?
I hope so, man. I hope so. So the good thing, I think, from a Baylor perspective with Sawyer Robertson starting this game is like the cliche, the element of surprise thing, right? Because we have no tape on Sawyer Robertson. He threw 12 passes total at Mississippi State. So we know him as a promising prospect, a Texas high school kid who had a big couple of years out in Lubbock, actually. But we just don't know much about him. And honestly, as Baylor fans, we don't even know what kind of game plan they're going to throw this week, because he's not the prototypical wide zone Jeff Grimes type of quarterback that Blake Shapen certainly is in the check down, in the short passing game and the play action. He is very much a shotgun, one read, almost Bryles style type of quarterback back there. At least that's what he was in high school. That's what he was obviously at Mississippi State. And now you bring him in and you're trying to get him used to this very, very different style of offense, and still a young kid, 19 years old, 20-year-old kid. And oh yeah, you're now the starter against a top 15 team. Go at it, young man. And so we don't even know what this game plan is going to be. I imagine it's probably going to be changed up a little bit. It reminds me of 2021, our greatest year in recent memory here at Baylor, winning the Big 12, winning the Cotton Bowl, or excuse me, not the Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Could have been a playoff team had we not lost to TCU like we always do, but they had Chandler Morris out there that week, and Baylor just clearly did not have a game plan for him. He scrambled all over them. He had a huge day, and that was the difference in the game. So that can give you some cautious optimism as a Baylor fan of, we don't know what the playbook's going to be for him, but Utah probably doesn't either.
No, they don't. And that was something that I think gave Florida some issues coming into the game, is they knew Cam was out, but they're like, okay, we've seen a little bit of Bryson Barnes, but the one time Bryson started, they found out 10 minutes before the game that Cam wasn't going to be able to go. So even that game plan wasn't designed around Bryson.
Small playbook.
Yeah. Nate Johnson, with what a dynamic athlete he is, the Florida defense wasn't really sure the problem he presented. So that is a really good point. And you just mentioned in general, like, you just don't know with backup QBs. Like this, if Baylor were to win this game, this is the type of performance that builds college football legends. A top 15 team in your first start. And look, we've seen, I know Caleb Williams was more talented and all that, but like, he came in at halftime against Texas when he was at Oklahoma. We know what he did from that point on. How about Cam Rising? Even against San Diego State, Utah lost that game when he came in the second half, but he got the game to overtime, nearly completed the comeback. You're just like, okay, that's special right there. So I agree. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that he can come in and have that special of a game. It's not likely that he's going to be able to do that and just shred this Utah defense, but it's not out of the question. I think the one thing that hurts Baylor, in my opinion, is like, when you have a backup coming in, you need the team to play really well. That's what happened with Utah. When Cam was out last week against Florida, the totality of Utah stepped up. The defensive line was very dominant. I thought the linebackers were pretty good overall. The secondary ended up giving up 300 yards. So much of that was when the game was 24-3 already. So it's kind of like, for the most part, they dominated even. And just Utah's offense in general, they moved the ball at points. They stalled a little bit too, but other pieces stepped up with your quarterback out. Right. I'm worried about those other Baylor pieces stepping up, because this is what I saw against Texas State. I saw an O-line that struggled, particularly the right side in pass protection, really concerned me going forward. When Utah has better pass rushers than Texas State, obviously. The D-line, some of their big runs they got gashed on. They gave up a couple of those, but even some short yardage situations where it's like, okay, it's 4th and 3rd and 2. We're Baylor, they're Texas State, and Texas State gets the first down. So that's where I was like, interesting. Linebackers were over aggressive at times, ran themselves out of plays, and I mentioned the corners, even they struggled to hold up sometimes. They let up some passes in front of them and behind them throughout the game. And we already talked about a QB making his first start, but those are kind of my concerns for Baylor's. How many of those that I just listed do you feel like can be corrected going into week 2?
I hate to be too negative, but not many. There are some. So you talk about, there was a little bit of freelancing, and I saw that during the game, and I remember the play specifically. I think it was Texas State's 3rd touchdown. It was about that 70-yard touchdown run. Mike Smith, transfer that Dave Aranda has been talking up all offseason at linebacker from Liberty in the middle of the field. He's the only guy in the middle of the field. He tries to shoot a gap on the right side of the protection. Bang, 70 yards, gone. Bryson Jackson, a guy who's filled in at the star position, which is one we really love at Baylor because Jalen Petrie played it. He was all over the place, and none of it in a good way. So there was a lot of that. So those things should, right, JT, in theory, should be coachable and correctable from week 1 to week 2. A lot of the other stuff is just, what do you have in you? Okay? Because they got punched in the mouth from minute 1 to minute 60. At no point in the game were they the more physical team. At no point were they the aggressor. You talk about the short yardage situations, foregone conclusions. I had the great Joe Goodman next to me during the game, and it was a 4th and 3 that Finley brought in for a touchdown in the 3rd quarter. So we're way more than halfway into this game. And he says, they've converted all their 4th downs, but they've converted a lot of these short yardage situations today, and they haven't even done their read option yet. That's supposed to be a big part of their offense. They didn't do it, and Finley did it on that play and scored. Yeah. And so that just shows you this team Texas State hadn't even gotten into their bag of tricks yet, and they were just pounding Baylor off the line in any situation. So those things, I don't know how much you can correct from week 1 to week 2, especially how bad it was in week 1. Again, I mean, there's just no way to emphasize that enough. Utah is not Texas State. And I mean that in a very good way. Okay. Yeah. And we said it before the cameras are rolling. I do think Texas State's a solid team this year. Solid team. But Utah is a team that is competing to go to the Rose Bowl again. So there are different levels to this. And to that end, I don't know how much of this we can expect to be fixed. Because so much of it is just, where's your intensity at? How have the coaches gotten you ready for this game? It's something we heard a few times last year that Dave Aranda didn't have his guys ready, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I'm wondering, are these coaches going to have these guys ready mentally for this game? Are they going to be up for this game? I get it's Texas State, but it's week 1 and you're playing college football again. How are you not up for that game? And if you're not up for a top 15 team in your own barn in week 2 of the season, a future conference opponent, I don't know where 3 wins are coming from, let alone 6.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. And you make a good point about Utah playing for the Rose Bowl because of the change. One of the changes of just this season, we know the 12 team won't take effect next year. The Rose Bowl is part of the college football playoff this year. Utah,
which I remembered after.
Yeah, so, I made that.
No disrespect to Utah. They could absolutely compete for that. I just remembered it after I said it.
No, and I made that mistake on a past show. Was also alerted to it quickly as well. So I wanted to make note now so my listeners know I do hear your comments and I hear when you guys correct me. But yeah,
let this dummy on.
Yeah. I think you make a great point about the motivation factor. That will be better for Baylor. And, speaking just of the motivation, keys to the game, and we still got to get to Cam Rising's health. We got to touch on all of that and more in one moment. But first, want to talk to you guys about our great friends at LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Make sure you guys go over and add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Small businesses are rated #1 by LinkedIn Jobs in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Also, we got to tell you guys about something that me and Cameron are both really excited about. It's the Locked On College Football Kickoff live show each Friday, one that the former host of Locked On Baylor, Drake Toll, is going to be hosting every week, as he did last Friday too. Goes live at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. So if you guys want to click on Locked On Baylor, or just Locked On Utes, you can find it there. And it's a great show each week, breaking down rivalries, biggest storylines, matchup. Make sure you guys check out the College Football Kickoff live each Friday. Cameron, what are you expecting out of Drake this week on that one?
Chaos. I don't know why we continue to give him a bigger platform. No, you know what? You guys just wear him out for our high school. We do high school football broadcasting together every Friday night. So by the time he's on with me, he's totally worn out and I got to take over the show. So that's a double-edged sword, good and bad.
Yeah.
Drake is a divisive figure. I'll say that. The people here in Waco don't need to hear that twice, but give him a chance. People outside of Waco, give him a chance. Okay. He's fun. He's fun to be around.
I think Drake makes really good points. I enjoy Drake a lot. I know a lot of Utah fans. They weren't the most friends. Some of the BYU stuff, but for those of you Locked On Utes listeners, Drake will actually be coming on the show tomorrow. So if you guys give it a chance, I think Drake will warm up on you guys.
If you don't like me, you'll definitely like him. Yeah. And if you like me, you still might like him.
You never know.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's how chaotic he is. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, 1000%. One thing I did want to go back to is you mentioned look, the motivation factor is good. It will be a thing in this game too. I think that Baylor is going to be playing very desperate versus I think Utah will be motivated and they'll be ready for this game and they're the better team. But Baylor's going to dig deep. I mean, they know being 0-1, you don't want to be 0-2. Like this is the chance your season's off the rails. If you upset Utah, you could get it back on rails, honestly. So I think that's a big thing going into this game. And the one factor that's really in Baylor's favor against Utah doesn't have to do with the on-field matchup itself. It is the atmosphere, the weather, the heat. This Utah's worst defensive performance last year came traveling down to a humid environment going to Florida. Now, the humidity is a little stronger in Florida, but it's going to be really hot in Texas too, in Waco, the day of the game. So I think that is going to be a big thing that Utah has to reckon with in this game as well, Cameron. And the one thing I do actually, and I'll let you jump in really quick. What were you say there?
No, I was going to say you're absolutely right there. Altitude's a different animal, but come down and play in this heat. It's not easy. I will say there will be plenty of Utes fans here. But on the flip side, there'll be a lot of Cougar fans here too. They're all over the place, as you guys know. And they have, for whatever reason, we didn't ask for it, but we're not turning them away. So I'll be transparent there. They are linking arms with us here this week.
Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right. That's why I like tech so much. Yeah. We hate the right people.
Oh, 100%. One other interesting wrinkle for this game is, as the time we are recording this, we do not still know Cam Rising's availability for the game. And I don't think we'll know until kickoff or 24 hours before, just like that's what happened last week. 24 hours before the game, it was reported by Josh Newman of KSL.com. He's a contributor there, and Pete Thamel actually jumped in and got it in as well, that Cam wouldn't be playing. We won't know until the last second. If Cam plays, I obviously feel even better about Utah's chances. Just with how Utah looked in week one with Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson, and how Baylor looked in week one, I still expect Utah to win this game, even if it's the dual quarterback system once again, Cameron.
Yeah, I would lean towards you. I'm wondering though, if let's just play this out. Rising's playing, he hears about it, or we hear about it a couple hours before the game. Are you worried about like him having some rust? Because that will obviously be there whenever he comes back and plays, but that giving Baylor a little bit of hope? Because I mean, I watched the Utah game pretty much start to finish last week. I agree with your points exactly. There were times where it stalled, but for the most part, the offense looked comfortable, and it was definitely at least something to build on, to where I say, I as a fan of Utah, I might want to say, let's just ride that rhythm there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think you could definitely go that way.
Look, I'm pulling the straws here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find something.
I think there's a reason Cam's still the starter, right? Like, I even think an injured, like an 80% to 90% Cam, which if he played in this game, he's going to be. Cam will not have like I don't think Cam comes back and has like a 400-yard, like dominant performance. Like, you just coming off the injuries coming off of, you never see quarterbacks play like these unreal games in their first game back. But I do believe he's still going to be better than a Bryson or a Nate, just because of what we've seen from him, what he's accomplished. He's not going to be as mobile as a Nate. He never is, but even when he's healthy, he does have a factor that he uses running with his legs effectively. But I just think from a passing standpoint, he's by far Utah's most accurate quarterback. And I think that's where he would have success just making plays in general. But I do think you raise an interesting point of it being his first game back, and maybe it's just he hasn't been able to practice to fully and everything. So maybe he could be off. And we've heard this is the week that Coach Witt did reveal he is going to be practicing without restrictions for the first time this entire week. So how does he look? We'll factor into that decision-making process, and it's going to be interesting to see. And, you mentioned if Cam Rising, that actually kind of leads into our key takeaways for the game. Whatever quarterback starts for Utah, I think one thing that Utah needs to do a good job is taking care of the ball, because the last thing I want to have happen is you don't beat yourself. You are the better team than Baylor right now. It's anytime you go on the road, things can change a little bit, but Utah is the better team on paper. They should win this game. The way that doesn't happen is if you have quarterbacks like whether it's Cam, Nate, or Bryson turn the ball over, multiple interceptions, maybe fumbles. So just in general, I think Utah has to take care of the ball. If you can dominate the time of possession, like just run the ball and methodically just operate your offense, control the time of the possession, that's going to get the Baylor crowd out of it a little bit, because they're going to be dejected if they fall behind. But if you create turnovers, if Baylor's able to create turnovers and you give the ball away, that gives them life too. And I think the other thing I will just mention for my keys to it for the game for Utah is stopping the run. Anytime you have a backup quarterback in there, you're going to want to establish the running game for Baylor. You're going to want to lean on the running game more so, because you don't want your backup quarterback to be in third and long situations. So I think if Utah stops the run and takes care of the ball, I think they should win this game.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point about establishing the run, because it's something that Baylor couldn't even get going on Saturday because they were behind the whole game, which is just not something you expected against the game against Texas State. But yes, that is where Baylor's bread and butter should be offensively this year. They have two number one backs, Dominic Richardson, the transfer from Oklahoma State, Richard Reese, who had an awesome freshman season last year. Those guys should both be all Big 12 caliber guys. The offensive line is one of the keys for me, because they were horrible in week one, both in the limited chances they had blocking for the run, and especially pass blocking. And the running backs were terrible in pass blocking situations too. But that right side of the line, there was nobody I thought had a good game on the line, but there was one drive in the second half where I was saying, Clark's the center, I think. Anyway, the center. I was like, he's, this is not a good sign that your center is your best offensive lineman, but I think he's had a good game today. We get a 4th and 2 and he gets absolutely blown up and we don't go. So no one gets a reprieve from week one on the offensive line, and the defense in general. Just there was no position group. I said there was no position coach that slept well that night, because no one did their job. And so the forcing of the turnovers is something that Baylor has not been able to do the last season plus. It was a big thing that they could not do last year. But week 1, they couldn't get off the field either. It was basically punt for Texas State on the first drive, a legitimate fumble on the second drive that Baylor forced, so give them that. And then 6 straight touchdown drives with another fumble mixed in there. That was a botched flea flicker, which I haven't ever really seen at this level, where Texas State just handed Baylor the ball back. So if this defense can get off the field, I would feel great about it, because I just don't know how ball hungry these guys are. They didn't show strength. They didn't show aggressiveness last week. So those are the things that usually lead to turnovers, right? So that is going to be the big portion of it. And that's kind of also in my same point about if Cam Rising comes in and he's rusty. You don't need him to be rusty for the whole game if you're Baylor. You just need a first couple of drives for him to make a mistake or two, and you get a turnover, a short field, momentum, points at the very best. It's the same thing with the defense, and it's a little bit tougher. If you can create a few turnovers, a few short fields, lead that to points, lead that to a lead, then you don't have to play stellar defense the whole game, which is something I'm sure they'd love to hear, because they don't like doing that.
Football can be a complex game, but it can also be a simple game in some ways, because this is literally what could happen. Let's say Baylor starts with the ball first. Coverage bust, boom, 70-yard Baylor touchdown, just because one or two guys on the Utah defense made a mistake. I don't think this will happen, but these are just the type of things that can happen and have happened in other college football games where it seemed improbable that those kind of circumstances would play out. And then let's say it is Cam's first possession. Maybe Utah's driving the ball a little bit. Oh, Cam threw a pick six. Utah's down 14-0. Like, that's the kind of things that just happen in general in college football. And why, even though Utah should win this game and is the better team on paper, you can't just be like, oh yeah, Utah's going to roll over Baylor. This won't be close or anything like that. And yeah, I don't care if it's
from your lips to God's ears, please, man. I'm starting to dream about this scenario.
Yeah. And speaking of scenarios, we got to give our game predictions in one moment. But first, I want to tell you guys a little bit more about our great friends at Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have killer deal on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. They have flash deals on last-minute tickets. It's easy to find and buy seats of every kind for any event, and they have images of the seats so you can truly know what your view will look like at the event you're going to. They also have a low price guaranteed and even cancellation protection, job loss protection, and so much more. So it's such a great thing with Gametime. There are so many vast ways you can get a great deal, and you get the Gametime guarantee, which means you always get the best price if you find the tickets in the same section row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an email and create an account, not an email, of course, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cameron, before we close this one out, I do want to tell all my great Locked On Utes listeners a little bit more about our great friends at UCCU. With UCCU, they have a great deal going on right now, guys. It's Learn and Earn, the UCCU mobile banking app that pays your entire family to learn about money. Kids look to parents to become more financially literate. Parents don't always know the answers. Learn and Earn breaks down financial topics into fun, bite-sized educational games like quizzes and trivia. Every time a family member completes a topic, they earn points that occur and can be redeemed for gift cards to stores like Amazon, Apple, Sephora, Walmart, Nike, and more. There's age-appropriate content for every member of the family who can compete against each other and track their progress on leaderboards. Learn and Earn is inside the UCCU mobile banking app, so play it anytime, anywhere. The more you play, the more you learn, and the more you learn, the more you earn. Learn and Earn, part of UCCU's award-winning Be Money Smart Youth Banking Program, helping kids, teens, and parents have fun while becoming more financially literate together. UCCU, love where you bank. All right, Cameron, to close this one out, let's hear it. Game prediction. And I'd also love for you, like, just kind of like how you think it's going to play out. Like, what do you think is going to happen? I'm curious. You feeling a Baylor win?
No, I'd love to. I think realistically, I'm looking at like a 31-20 Utah win. And I do play these things out in my head, JT. I really do. So I think it's going to be one of those where Baylor maybe does get an early lead, like a 7-6, 10-7, something like that. Feeling good. The defense is just playing out of their minds. You're like, wow, this is such a different defense from week one. couple blown plays. Utah extends that lead, but Baylor sticks in it, and they keep getting stops, but nothing is happening offensively. And you're like, we want Blake back after all of this cry of we want to see anyone else but Blake, who has a great week 1. And now it's like, now we can't move the ball. They figured this Sawyer kid out, and Baylor loses. Maybe score a garbage time touchdown. Looks a little bit better. And it's not as bad as it was, but it's not great either. Now, I will throw in this little wrinkle because I know we're running out of time. If Baylor's going to win the game, though, it's going to be the way we're talking about turnovers early, Baylor hanging on for dear life. If it's a Baylor victory, it would be 23-21. But I'm sticking. You asked me for a prediction.
Yeah.
31-20 Utah.
I think I agree with that.
Gosh, first time on this. First time representing Locked On Baylor. I got to pick a Baylor loss. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. It's hard, though. Like, if I was in your shoes as well and you lost to a Texas State, it's hard to, even though you're home again, it's hard to be like, oh, yeah, we'll beat a top 15 team. Like, just with the way that game played out, having, like I said, I've watched it myself now. It's just, I'm with you. It's hard to predict that. And I can,
even if they win ugly last week against Texas State, I'm like, heck yeah. We've been waiting all summer for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Coaches won't say it, but they've thrown wrinkles into practice every day talking about Utah. This is the game. They've been planning for Florida. We've been planning for them. And alas, we didn't. And here we are. Anyway.
Yeah. Unfortunately, here you guys are. And I think if you guys were to somehow win this game, to your point, which is once again not out of the realm of possibilities, I think the Utah offense really struggles. And I think you're dead right with you hold the Utah offense under 25. Because I don't see, like I said, I don't see Baylor's offense scoring 30 based on how it looked last week against a much better defense. But I could see the scenario, the world that plays out where Utah maybe turns the ball over and some of that happens. But that is an unlikely world. And I do think what's going to happen in this game is Utah is going to win. I think Utah is going to get off to a pretty good start in this game. They're usually on the road. Last year at Florida, they had a really strong first drive. I think they're going to come out with a pretty strong start in the game plan overall. As I said, I don't know if Cam Rising is going to play. I actually did 40-60 earlier in the week that he would not play. I should say 40 he would play, 60 he wouldn't. So I'm making this prediction without Cam playing. I think the offense will be better in week 2 with Andy Ludwig, and I thought Baylor showed those struggles we talked about. I'm going to go 34-17. Utah beats Baylor in week 2.
That's fair. We're not that far off there.
We're really not. Yeah. You kind of added like the 3 or the 4 you had. Like you had 21-31. I just kind of dispersed those 3 points.
It's going to be 59-10, but we are both pretty similar. 59-10 Baylor, of course.
Yeah, of course. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And Cameron, one thing that's just going to be fun is Utah and Baylor are, of course, going to be in the same conference. So if Utah fans do want to follow the Baylor Bears after this game, of course, and see where it kind of goes from there, where should they head over to?
Well, they should go to Locked On Baylor so my bosses keep me on here. Locked On Baylor on Twitter and, of course, on YouTube. Same way you're finding JT here in Locked On Utes and all their great content. Also, me on Twitter, that's at RealCamStuart. For those of you who don't have it on YouTube in front of you, I try to do a lot of Baylor takes with some marginal comedy in there and a lot of Boston sports takes that nobody on my timeline cares about. So if that fits you as well, come on in. The water's fine. We do Big 12 in general, of course. Most of it's banter. But yes, you guys are going to have to get used to that. Okay. You're coming to the truck stop conference, whether you like it or not.
It's going to be a lot of fun once it gets underway. And I do want to give you credit for sticking to your points because I watched your video after your post-game reaction. You said you weren't feeling great about the Utah game. You haven't changed since. So I give you credit for sticking to your guns on this.
I'm telling you, at like 8:30 a.m. Saturday, though, Baylor 35, Utah 3.
There you go.
This will be TCU Utah 2010 all over again.
Ooh. Good poll by you, right?
That's a nice poll, right? That was a Mountain West poll.
That was a nice poll.
I mean, not nice for you guys, but yes, you know what I mean.
I was impressed. Yeah, I was just impressed with the poll in general overall. But Cam, it's been a lot of fun doing
BCS this. Buster Midwest or Mountain West poll. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy to look back on that. And who knows? Maybe Baylor will play the Buster and be able to crush Utah's chances more than likely at the college football.
Or maybe we'll be in the Mountain West. We'll see. All of these things are still possible.
That's what Kyle Whittingham said. Nothing's impossible at this point. So we'll watch and see how it all plays out, but make sure you guys check out Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor for your team's coverage every single day. And we'll be back with you tomorrow with our final predictions and just breakdown of Utah versus Baylor coming up this Saturday.